I too consider myself an entrepreneur and have had an entrepreneurial spirit for quite some time, starting early on. However, getting married and starting a family postponed those things for me. And so I, in the meantime, was the supportive partner in the marriage in many ways, from taking care of the kids to managing the home to having a steady, prominent income for the family and trying to support my husband as well. And I will say that did become very taxing to me. There were times that I really felt like it was not fair. Like literally, welcome to Real Talks with an Entrepreneur's Wife's podcast with Janelle. I am your friend, your sister on this journey of being in a relationship with an entrepreneur. And today we are going to be talking about the reason why I felt like this podcast was needed and necessary. My husband and I, we've been married for nearly 20 years and we have 3 children together. And my husband, I like to call a serial entrepreneur. Me, on the other hand, yes, entrepreneurial. However, I do appreciate and enjoy stability. And I do have a steady career, which I knew from early on that I wanted to be a registered nurse. And so soon after high school, I did pursue my career by going to college, getting my degree, started working soon as I got out of college in my profession as a registered nurse and have been doing so for 23 years now. And so, as most of you can imagine, healthcare is very, very stable, steady income as long as you're doing a great job, as long as you are taking care of your patients or whatever, whoever you're taking care of, whether you're teaching or taking care of people for their health. Nursing is a very, very stable career that you can essentially take anywhere you go because people are always going to need nurses. And very passionate, love the career that I'm in. Doing it for 20 years, I did not necessarily know or feel like I would be doing it for 20 years. In fact, I do remember that there was a time when I actually said that in 20 years, I want to retire from nursing and do something different. Now, there was a time during my nursing career when I had the opportunity to do some travel nursing in California. My first California travel assignment was in Redlands, California, and I really enjoyed it. But while I was there, I had the privilege and pleasure to be exposed to these assisted living facilities that, from where I'm from, all I knew was nursing homes, so that probably says a lot about me. I was raised in a very small town. And again, exposure to long-term care was in the realm of nursing homes. So I never knew what an assisted living facility was. But lo and behold, I would walk and I would see these beautiful facilities. And I went into a couple of them and saw their brochures. And I thought to myself, I would love to have one of these one day. Just thinking back to my hometown and my community. And I'm like, they deserve to be able to retire in places like this. So it was my aspiration, my desire to have an assisted living facility at some point. Long story short, I met my husband while I was on a travel assignment. I was in Charleston, South Carolina on a travel assignment, and that's where I met my husband. And after my travel assignment in Charleston is when I went to California. But anyhow, we started dating, and at some point I got pregnant and we got married. And well, we were already planning to get married when I found out that I was pregnant. So anyway, my husband has been a serial entrepreneur. His drive, his entrepreneurial spirit, his desire to have and do more and to be better. Those types of things attracted me to him. And so, nevertheless, when I found out that I was pregnant, I can't say it was immediately, but I do remember thinking to myself that, yes, I want to have an assisted living facility one day. However, I know that that's going to take a lot of work. a lot of time, a lot of sacrifice. And so, bringing a child into the world, I said to myself, I do not want to sacrifice starting a business at this magnitude, starting a marriage, and risking, sacrificing family and or marriage in order to start a business. So we ended up getting married. We were supposed to relocate to California because my hospital that I had worked with had told me that if I ever wanted to come back there to work, they would hire me and they would hire me on as a regular staff. And so my husband and I, or fiance at the time, had discussed it, and our plans were actually to move to California after we got married. Nevertheless, that did not happen. And I'll just, fill you all on the story as we go along in this podcast journey. But so, I kind of got on. Where was I going with this? Okay. So I kind of got on in order to share that with you because although the name of this podcast is Real Talks with an Entrepreneur's Wife, I too consider myself an entrepreneur and have had an entrepreneurial spirit for quite some time, starting early on. However, getting married and starting a family postponed those things for me. And so I, in the meantime, was the supportive partner in the marriage in many ways, from taking care of the kids to managing the home to having a steady, prominent income for the family and trying to support my husband as well. And I will say that did become very taxing to me. There were times that I really felt like it was not fair, like literally, and that's why I say the struggle has been real. The struggle has been real because, again, I have sacrificed many years, my dreams, my desires of having my own business, of starting an assisted living facility. And one day, who knows, maybe I will, maybe I won't. I've started something else in the meantime, hence this podcast. But I'll have to say, this is part of a passion project for me. This is a passion project starting off for me because I understand the struggles. I've gone through many of the struggles and I suffered silently for many years, not knowing who to talk to, how to bring it up. And one of the things I want to share is that being good single does not mean that you'll be a great wife. And so what I mean by that is that when my husband and I first met, I was pretty independent, pretty self-sufficient, had my career and it was going well. I had my own place, I had my own vehicle, I had been saving money, doing well from that perspective, well respected. I took care of myself. I was not one of those women that were out in the street. Yes, I do enjoy going and having a good time and dancing and laughing, going to the movies and things of that nature. However, I was not one of those people that were in the streets, just doing all kind of things. That was just not me. So as a single woman, I felt like those were some prime characteristics, ideal situations for partnering up with someone. But little did I know, this marriage thing was going to teach me a whole lot about myself, about marriage, about partnering, about just so many things in life. And so, Real Talks with an Entrepreneur's Wife's podcast is stemmed around many of my challenges as it relates to being in a relationship, being married to an entrepreneur, and suffering silent many different periods of our marriage. My husband has been very patient with me. I will say that he's been patient. I feel like I've been very patient with him as well. However, I've had some moments where I was not nice. I was not agreeable. My suffering in silence was exhibited in other ways that was not good. And so, Real Talks with an Entrepreneur's Wife, we'll have many women come on and I'll have conversations with them to talk about their journeys as well as, being in a relationship with an entrepreneur. We'll talk about some of the challenges that we have experienced, some of the triumphs, you know, lessons that we've learned because I would like to be able to help just one other woman that is in a relationship with an entrepreneur, and really it is where she needs to be. He needs her, she needs him. However, because of some of the challenges that comes along with being in a relationship with an entrepreneur, not knowing how to navigate those things can oftentimes cause a lot of struggles that we don't necessarily have to or should have to go through. And I like to think about it like nursing school. I'll just use my nursing career. So I went to nursing school, first started off with my bachelor's, later went on and got my master's. But I knew that there's information out there, there's education out there, there's mentors, there's teachers, there's instructors in all these different places. There's books, there's videos, there's all this plethora of information out about nursing that I had at my disposal to be the great nurse that I am. However, as it relates to being in a relationship, not just any relationship, being in a relationship with an entrepreneur, I was not finding a lot of information about that. I was find sprinkles of information here or there, but not to the extent that now I wish that I had years ago. My husband and I do believe that we could have been so much further along in our marriage, in our parenting, in business, just so many different from a personal standpoint, emotional, physical, spiritual, just financially, just all of the things. I really believe that if I had the right resources, if I had the right contacts, if I had the right support, if I had the right community, we could have been so much further along. And so, again, through Real Talks with an Entrepreneur's Wife, I am so looking forward to bringing other women on the show that are married to an entrepreneur, has been in a relationship with an entrepreneur, even the ones that were in a relationship and they, maybe divorced, they broke up because they did not know how to navigate the struggles. I want to hear their stories and I want to bring those stories to you so that it will be helpful to you. We know, most of you know that entrepreneurship is not an easy journey. In fact, there are statistics out that talks about how businesses fail in such, short period of time. And who starts a business in order for it to close? Like, who starts a journey on anything for it to fail? Like nobody really does that. I don't know of anybody. I didn't do that. Anything that I attempted at, my goal was to succeed. And I know that your goal as well is to succeed. Just like being in a relationship, we go into dating relationships and we have a goal in mind. And maybe I'm wrong, but I would say that it's more likely than not that when people get into a relationship, they have a desire to succeed in whatever that goal was that they went into that relationship for. So if you were in a romantic relationship with an entrepreneur, your goal is probably to have a long lasting relationship with your entrepreneur man. So like me, I know that when my husband and I got together, my ultimate goal was to be married forever, for us to have a beautiful, long lasting life. Well, my people are here, so I got to cut this video short, y'all. Bye.